thanks for joining us. This is AMECO English Service and you're watching our daily updates live from the studio. I'm Gaila Damu. Stay with us. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said continued growth trajectory demonstrates Ethiopia's economic resilience. Addressing the House of People's Representatives today, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the macroeconomy of Ethiopia has been growing despite several challenges. The economy has shown growth despite bottlenecks resulted from coronavirus pandemic, drought, and the conflict in the northern part of the country. Abiy indicates that at the end of the 2014 Ethiopian fiscal year, the gross domestic product of the nation witnessed 6.4% growth, and the nation plans to achieve 7.5% growth this year. The agriculture has witnessed 6.1% growth, he said, citing the productivity in the wheat farming as a driving force for the results. Ethiopia's economy reached $126.7 billion at the end of the 2014 fiscal year as the per capita income increased to $1,212. Prime Minister Abiy underscored that the Ethiopian economy rising to first in the East Africa and third in the Sub-Saharan Africa, according to the World Bank report. He said that, however, the government did not agree with the report in its entirety. The Premier added that because Ethiopia has both formal and informal economic activity, the government believes it has achieved greater growth than the report indicates. The challenges have prompted culture of hard working in the nation, the Premier underscored, adding that several measures are being taken to address the inflation. American journalists said African Union is becoming stronger and stronger in defending African sovereignty. The independent American journalist Ann Garrison said the African Union has become stronger in defending African sovereignty by promoting African solutions to African problems. Fukardi Zaudu reports.
It is to be recalled that the government of Ethiopia and TPLF have signed a peace agreement last week after the peace talks conducted under the auspices of the African Union. A contributing editor at Black Agenda and host of the Listener of Cries on Pacifica Radio, and Garrison told Ethiopian news agency that the African Union has become stronger and stronger in defending African sovereignty. Appreciating the efforts of the African Union to bring a peaceful solution to the conflict in northern Ethiopia, the American journalist described the peace agreement reached between the government and TPLF as a great achievement for African solution to African problems.
The AU has been admirable from the very beginning in defending African solutions to African problems, and they never wavered. As have the African members, the current African members of the UN Security Council, were also faithful to defending Ethiopian sovereignty throughout the past 2 years. African nations on the Security Council, the African Union several times spoke to the Security Council in defense of African solutions to African problems and Ethiopia's sovereignty. So, yeah, I've seen the African Union become stronger and stronger in defending African sovereignty over some years.
The journalist stressed the need for the African Union to be self-sufficient in terms of finance in its efforts to address African problems without any external influences. Garrison also noted that the peace agreement will help Ethiopia to overcome foreign pressure, citing the bills of sanctions against Ethiopia by the U.S. officials since the peace agreement has been negotiated. According to the American journalist, Ethiopia has done a great job in this whole process in defending its sovereignty, noting that the peace agreement is a great exercise to the nation's sovereignty. She stated that she is glad that Ethiopia is taking the issue of accountability and justice into its own hands, saying that this is Ethiopia's agreement that is also being implemented by Ethiopians themselves.
I'm really sad about how much Ethiopia has lost to this war. I mean, wars are very expensive. remember hearing the chair of the National Dialogue Commission speaking on one of your broadcast outlets, and he said, we're losing everything to this war, our resources and our young people. And so, that it's over is great, but there's been terrific loss.
She noted the peace agreement will pave ways for Ethiopia to properly utilize its resources for economic development, adding that wars consume a great deal of national wealth. Garrison pointed out that the government needs to solicit international resources for the construction and rehabilitation of war-torn areas as part of the peace deal, taking into account the sovereignty and national integrity of the country.
Ministry of Mines and SGS are to build modern geochemistry laboratory with a cost of $50 million. The Ministry of Mines of Ethiopia and SGS, a world-leading verification, testing and certification company, has signed an agreement to build a modern mining geochemistry laboratory with a cost of $50 million in Addis Ababa. Abebe Burhani tells us more.
Minister for Mines and Petroleum Tackle Uma and Managing Director of SGS Ziad Oti signed the agreement on the sidelines of the International Mining and Technology Expo that kicked off on Thursday at the Millennium Hall, Addis Ababa. Minister of Mines and Petroleum Tackle Uma said during the occasion that the $50 million laboratories will play a vital role for the development of mining sector in Ethiopia. According to him, up until now, several companies, especially those in the mining sector, used to send their mineral samples abroad to get testing, verification and certification to verify the quality of their samples. He said, when operational in just a year's time, hopefully before the next Mintex exhibition, SGS's laboratory will enable mining companies that operate in Ethiopia and even Africa to get testing, verification and certification inside the country. SGS Managing Director Ziad Oti said they will immediately start to work the feasibility studies and the details needed. He added that the company will exert efforts to make the facilities ready for service as per the agreed date.
Facilities, laboratories to serve the country, help the country export more, and as soon as we have signed, we will start working on the feasibility studies and all the details that are needed, and hopefully sometime in the near future we will have the facilities here ready for the industry in Ethiopia to make use of.
UN lauds opening of humanitarian corridors to speed up aid flow to conflict-affected regional states. We apologize for the technical error, and let me remind you the news again. UN lauds opening of humanitarian corridors to speed up aid flow to conflict-affected regional states. The UN resident and humanitarian coordinator in Ethiopia has appreciated the announcement that the government has opened all humanitarian corridors to accelerate unhindered access to relief supplies in Tigray, Afar, and Amhara regions. Fukradi Zaudu has the details.
Approached by Ethiopian news agency after the announcement made by National Disaster Risk Management Commissioner about the opening of the corridors, United Nations Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator Catherine Suzy said the United Nations stands ready to work and support the efforts of the government to deliver life-saving assistance. She also welcomed the peace agreement, which is vital to maximize the humanitarian logistics routes, accessibility and supplies, noting that there was a call for unhindered humanitarian access to the people in need. The coordinator stated that the United Nations humanitarian community is now ready to really put all their efforts in supporting the efforts of the government and working with the government in all areas.
First of all, just to say that on behalf of the United Nations in Ethiopia, we're very happy to hear about the peace agreement that was signed on the 2nd of November. And in that agreement, promises were made about unfettered, unhindered humanitarian access to people in need, wherever they are, across Tigray and across Afar and Amhara, where the people are. So today, the announcement by Ambassador Shifra Teklemariam during this meeting here at the EDRMC is very much appreciated. Today, this evening, he has announced that we will have access going in and out of Tigray with commodities by road, with commodities by air, and really that is really good news for us.
According to Suzy, the United Nations humanitarian agencies have been providing aid and life-saving assistance to many people in Tigray, Afar and Amhara regions, but the supplies have not been enough to the level which they expect because of the conflict. With the promise of the cessation of hostilities, she said, they welcome this because that means, number one, the impact of the conflict, which has been very severe to ordinary people, has been huge and they can get what they need to be able to recover. Suzy explained that this is a good news for the people of Tigray, Amhara and Afar.
But for the people in Tigray, Afar and Amhara, this is a good day. And we as the UN have promised we will do everything in our capacity to respond as soon as possible with everything that we have in order to be able to do this. Working in partnership, of course, and as Ambassador Shifero has stated, we will be monitored and meeting regularly to ensure where are we not meeting people, what commodities do people need that they have said they need, and where do we need to get those from as soon as possible.
Meanwhile, the National Disaster Risk Management Commissioner Shifra Teklemariam said yesterday that all corridors of humanitarian access to Tigray as well as the town regional states, Amhara and Afar, are open for any kind of operation, and that all kinds of supplies like food, non-food items, medical equipment, medicine and other related.
On behalf of the Commission and the very many actors of the government, I'd like to declare that all the corridors of the humanitarian access to Tigray, as well as the two regional states, Amhara and Afar, is open for any kind of operation. What it means is all kinds of supplies. It may be food, non-food items, medical equipments, medicine itself, and other related matters as well.
The Commissioner also called on donors to make possible this very engagement and partners to make sure the supplies reach the needy people in Tigray, Amhara and Afar. The government, jointly with humanitarian partners, may also refine some of the engagement, particularly targeting the needy. Moreover, he stated that there are several teams that are organized at the ground level for the upcoming distribution of humanitarian supplies.
May include various mechanisms that mobilizes the community for the all kinds of arrangements that may be needed at the ground, and also some security apparatuses which may still need to join hands to work together, basically to coordinate with the local team.
Shifra underscored that the Ethiopian government will be very much open and flexible to deal with whatever resource problems that the humanitarian actors would face. The four major humanitarian corridors opened pass through Gondar, Humera, Shiraro, Shire, Aksum, Adwa, Adirkai, Maitsamre, Shire, Waldia, Kobo, Alamat, Amekele, and Samara, Abala, Mekele.
An entrepreneur said foreign banks are important in improving banking services and finance sector. The Ethiopian entrepreneur Ermias Amelga said allowing foreign banks to operate in Ethiopia is important to improve banking services and the finance sector. Brown Workena has the details.
He told INA that allowing foreign banks to operate in Ethiopia will mainly bring competition in the financial sector and stimulate the banking service. He said foreign banks will mainly create better financial competitiveness in this market. He stated that competition is good as it motivates the banking sector to work to satisfy the needs of customers. It makes the banks to introduce new services, improve services and service fees. He added, according to the entrepreneur, the opening of the financial sector to foreign bankers should not be seen as a new phenomenon as the country used to have foreign banks and insurances. He believed that the restriction of foreign banks has negatively affected the financial system, competitiveness, service delivery and access to the wider population with new technologies. Ermias stated that since everyone is living in a globalized world in which trade, finance, technology and movement of people are now global, sitting alone closing doors does not make profitable and it is not right. He said only few countries with wrong policy have closed the financial sector to foreign banks in the world. Ermias argued that the recent opening of the telecom sector in Ethiopia has improved services and the same will be true for the banking sector. The entrepreneur stated East Africa and West Africa banks have now replaced the European and Americans after the latter exited decades ago. He thinks that they will not do the same services covered by the local banks because they do not know the country's economy, business environment, customers and they cannot give big creditors. Maybe they will provide bank service for the big foreign investment companies in Ethiopia because they know them well in other countries, he added. However, some critics raise concerns about how Ethiopia controls foreign bankers. A response to this, Ermias stated, the banks are international banks and give priority to their name and reputation and they certainly will abide by the law of the country. The coming of the foreign banks will fill big market gap, he stated, adding that they will come with big capital based on directive. Above all, they will bring knowledge and competition as well as professionalism and there will also be an opportunity to train the human power in the sector. New things should not be feared, the entrepreneur stated, adding that instead working on risk reduction and maximizing the importance is crucial. You cannot stop driving fearing car accidents, he stressed.
You're watching AMECO Haber English service and now let's proceed to news beyond borders. Officials said African Union Chairman and Senegal President Macky Sall is set to attend the upcoming G20 summit in Bali. One of the officials told Reuters news agency on Friday that Sall would have two hats at the meeting representing both the AU and Senegal. The visit, his first to a G20 summit, comes as Africa looks to hold wealthier nations to account for their climate pledges. It will follow Sall's attendance to the United Nations COP27 climate meeting in Egypt, where he was a leading advocate for rich countries to contribute more cash to help Africa adapt to climate change. The summit in Bali, Indonesia, takes place on November 15 to 16, overlapping the second week of the COP27 conference. Senegal is in discussions with G20 members about a deal to support its transition to low-carbon energy. The Just Energy Transition Partnership was pioneered by South Africa's deal last year with countries including the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany and France, providing funding to speed up its transition away from coal power. The official said he will be there at the conference and one of the agenda items he will be discussing with the G20 partners is in the Senegal GETP. In September, while addressing the 77th session of the UN's General Assembly, Sall had advocated for a seat for the AU within the G20 so that Africa can at last be represented where decisions are taken that affect 1.4 billion Africans. State of emergency declared in Darfur after tribal conflict leaves at least 24 dead. Sudan's Central Darfur State has declared a state of emergency for a month after more than 24 people were killed in tribal conflict, tribal leaders in the official SUNA agency reported on Monday. Burhan Workana presents the story.
Governor Saad Adam Babikar, quoted by SUNA, said the state of emergency was declared late Sunday night because both sides of the conflict fired live ammunition at the Reconciliation Commission that was trying to resolve the conflict. The conflict broke out last week between the Arab tribes of Misaria and Aulad Rachid in villages near Dalengi, the capital of Central Darfur in western Sudan. A Masiria tribal leader said it started with a stolen moped. The fighting, which has left at least 24 people dead, according to the SUNA agency, continues despite the state of emergency. Houses have been burned and the situation is still out of control despite the dispatch of government troops. According to experts, since the coup by Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in October 2021, tribal conflicts have exploded due to the security vacuum created by the coup. They have killed more than 800 people this year and displaced more than 265,000, according to the UN. According to the UN, a 2003 war in Darfur between the Arab-majority regime of Omar al-Bashir and rebels from ethnic minorities claiming discrimination has left at least 300,000 people dead and 2.5 million displaced, mostly in the early years of the conflict. Bashir, now in prison, was deposed in 2019 under pressure from the street and the army. Darfur remains regularly shaken by violence, particularly between rival tribes. The violence is caused by territorial disputes and difficulties in accessing water, among other things.
That's all the news we have for today. I'm Gaila Damu. Thanks for watching and stay tuned with the rest of our programs.